As you saw in the preview, this video is about what was the Earth like after dinosaurs. Sit back and get comfortable. And if you enjoy the video, please support the channel by subscribing, leaving a like, and writing a comment. And we begin. What was the Earth like after the dinosaurs vanished? After the thunder of their footsteps faded into a silence so deep it felt like the planet itself was holding its breath. And in that quiet, the world began again, not with a roar, but with a slow, uncertain whisper, as ash still drifted through the sky and sunlight struggled to pierce the veil that had settled over everything, turning days into dim gray echoes of what they once were. And across vast plains where giants once roamed, there now lay only broken shapes and shadows, the air thick with the memory of fire and loss. And yet beneath this stillness, life refused to surrender, pushing gently against the weight of extinction as small creatures stirred in burrows and beneath fallen trunks, their tiny hearts beating with a resilience that would one day reshape the planet itself. And forests that had been scorched began to heal in quiet defiance, green shoots piercing through blackened soil, reaching upward toward a sky that slowly, almost reluctantly began to clear, revealing a pale sun that warmed the land once more. And as seasons passed, the silence transformed into a different kind of sound, not the thunder of colossal bodies, but the rustling of leaves, the scurry of small feet, the cautious calls of birds that had survived, their songs fragile yet persistent, as if testing whether the world would answer back. And rivers that had once reflected towering forms now flowed past empty banks, their waters carrying fragments of a vanished age, while nurturing new life along their edges, where strange, unfamiliar creatures began to emerge, tentative and curious, filling the spaces left behind, not with dominance, but with adaptation, learning to thrive in a world that no longer belonged to giants. And the skies themselves seemed wider, emptier, as if the absence of massive wings had stretched them into something new. And in this openness, evolution began to experiment in countless quiet ways, shaping bodies and instincts suited not for overwhelming strength, but for survival in subtle, clever forms. And over countless years, the Earth softened, its scars fading beneath layers of growth and change, mountains weathering, oceans calming, climates shifting into patterns that would allow life to flourish again. And in the shadows of ancient ruins of bone and stone, the descendants of those small survivors grew bolder, exploring, adapting, spreading into every corner of the recovering world, until the memory of the dinosaurs became something distant, etched only in the land itself and in the deep instincts of creatures that had never seen them. And as time flowed onward, the Earth no longer felt like a place recovering from loss, but a world reborn, its silence replaced with the intricate, layered symphony of life that had learned, through catastrophe and patience, how to begin again. And in that renewed symphony, the smallest details carried the greatest weight. For where once the ground trembled under titanic force, it now whispered beneath delicate paws and careful steps. And forests thickened into vast green labyrinths, where light filtered down in shifting patterns, nurturing mosses and ferns that carpeted the earth like living memory. And among the branches, creatures leapt and climbed, their eyes bright with curiosity rather than fear of crushing shadows, their lives woven into the delicate balance of a world learning to breathe freely again. And over ages that stretched beyond imagination, these small lives grew into countless forms, each one a quiet answer to the question of survival, shaping themselves to the contours of a planet that had shed its former identity. And oceans too transformed, their depths once ruled by immense hunters, now filled with swarms of shimmering life, intricate ecosystems rising where emptiness had briefly reigned. And above them, the skies filled not with dominance, but with motion, flocks moving like living currents across the horizon, their calls echoing between mountains that had stood unchanged through the Great Extinction, silent witnesses to both devastation and renewal. And time continued its endless work, smoothing the scars of impact and fire, turning them into valleys rich with soil and life. And in those fertile lands, new kinds of creatures emerged that carried within them a spark of something different, something restless and aware, their senses sharper, their movements more deliberate, as though the earth itself was experimenting with a new kind of presence. And seasons cycled in rhythms that felt both ancient and newly meaningful. Rains nourishing forests that stretched farther each year, winds shaping landscapes that no longer bore the weight of giants, but instead held the intricate traces of countless smaller journeys. And with every passing generation, the memory of the age of dinosaurs faded deeper into the bones of the world, preserved in stone and silence rather than living form, until the planet no longer felt like a place defined by what it had lost, but by what it had become. A realm of endless variation where life thrived not through overwhelming size, but through adaptability and connection. And somewhere in that unfolding tapestry, beneath starlit skies that had watched every chapter without judgment, the Earth found a new identity, quieter yet more complex, a world that had endured catastrophe and reshaped itself into something richer, where every rustle in the grass, every ripple on the water, every distant call in the twilight carried the quiet triumph of survival and the promise that even after the greatest endings, life would always find a way to begin again.
And as the ages folded into one another like pages turned by an unseen hand, the quiet triumph of life deepened into something even more intricate. As if the Earth, having once been stripped to its bones, now took deliberate care in how it rebuilt itself, shaping not just bodies, but relationships, weaving every creature into a web so complex that no single life stood alone. And in this world of connections, the descendants of those early survivors grew more aware, their eyes reflecting not only instinct, but something resembling thought, a flicker of recognition in the way they paused to listen to the wind or watch the movement of others. And forests became not just places of shelter, but realms of constant dialogue, leaves trembling with hidden signals, roots exchanging unseen messages beneath the soil. And above, the sky changed endlessly, storms rolling across continents with a power that reminded all life of the forces that had once nearly ended everything. Yet now, those storms fed rivers, carved valleys, and nourished plains that stretched farther than memory could reach. And in those plains, creatures gathered, hunted, fled, and survived, their lives overlapping in patterns that slowly built towards something greater. And time, patient and unstoppable, continued to refine this world, nudging certain forms forward, encouraging others to fade, until among the countless beings there emerged a lineage unlike any before, one that did not simply adapt to the world, but began to understand it in fragments, sensing patterns in the stars, recognizing cycles in the seasons, and holding within fragile minds the beginnings of stories. And though they were still small, still vulnerable in a world vast and indifferent, they carried with them the quiet legacy of everything that had come before. From the towering dinosaurs whose absence had reshaped the planet, to the tiniest survivors who had endured the darkness. And in their movements, in their cautious exploration of forests and open lands, there was an echo of the Earth's own journey, a slow awakening that mirrored the planet's recovery. And as generations passed, this awareness grew, branching into curiosity, into memory, into the desire to shape the environments rather than merely endure it. And the world responded as it always had, offering both abundance and challenge, forcing these new minds to learn, to adapt, to imagine, until the silence that once followed the extinction was replaced by something entirely new, a world not just alive, but conscious in scattered, flickering ways, where the past lingered in stone and instinct, but the future began to form in thought and intention. and under the same vast sky that had witnessed fire and ash, life now carried within it the capacity to remember, to wonder, and perhaps one day to ask the very question that had lingered since the end of the dinosaurs. What had the Earth truly been like in that quiet beginning after the giants were gone, when everything fragile and small had inherited a world and slowly, patiently, turned it into something entirely new?
And from that fragile beginning, the question itself became a quiet inheritance passed through generations, not as words, but as a lingering curiosity embedded deep within the mind, shaping the way these beings observed the world around them, noticing the patterns etched into stone, the strange shapes buried beneath layers of earth, the echoes of something vast that had once existed and now remained only in fragments. And as their awareness sharpened, they began to gather those fragments, not yet understanding their full meaning, but sensing their importance, holding bones in their hands, tracing their outlines, wondering at their size, and imagining the lives they once belonged to. And in doing so, they unknowingly bridged the immense gulf of time, connecting the silent present to a thunderous past. And the Earth, ever patient, revealed its history in subtle ways, in cliffs layered like pages of a story, in fossils pressed in the rock, in the quiet persistence of life that had endured every change. And these observers, growing more thoughtful with each passing generation, began to piece together a narrative far older than themselves, one that spoke of fire falling from the sky, of darkness swallowing the sun, of an age where giants ruled and then vanished, leaving behind a world that had to begin again from its smallest forms. And as this understanding deepened, it changed the way they saw everything, turning forests into living archives, rivers into storytellers, mountains into ancient witnesses, and even the wind carried a sense of continuity, whispering through leaves that had descended from ancestors that survived the Great Extinction. And with this awareness came a profound realization that life was not a fixed state, but a process, an ongoing transformation shaped by forces both visible and unseen, and that every creature, no matter how small, played a role in that unfolding story. And so these beings, standing at the edge of knowledge and imagination, began to create their own meanings, shaping tools, building shelters, forming bonds that extended beyond simple survival. And in their gatherings around firelight, they shared not just food, but ideas, passing on what they had learned, turning observation into understanding, and understanding into culture. And though they could never truly witness the age of the dinosaurs, they carried its legacy within their curiosity, within their drive to explore and to know. And as their world grew richer with thought and memory, the Earth itself seemed to respond in quiet harmony, offering new challenges, new landscapes, new mysteries to unravel. And in this endless exchange between life and environment, the planet continued its journey, evolving not just in form, but in awareness, as if the silence that once followed the extinction had been filled not merely with sound, but with meaning. And in that meaning lay the continuation of a story that began long before these beings existed and would continue long after, a story of loss and renewal, of endings that gave way to beginnings, of a world that had once trembled under giants and now pulsed with the subtle, intricate rhythms of countless lives intertwined, each one a testament to the enduring truth that even in the aftermath of the greatest extinction, life does not simply return, it transforms, carrying forward the memory of what was while endlessly creating what will be, until the question itself, what was the Earth like after the dinosaurs, becomes less about a moment in time and more about a journey that never truly ends.